Wow! Eugenio Suarez became the 19th hitter to blast 4 homers in a game. Big deal. One time I hit 7 homers in a game. This is Major League Baseball, not your backyard wiffle ball league. Hey everyone, this is Will O'Toole welcoming you to another edition of Park Ridge Sports History. And as the cartoon communicated this week, I'm going to shed hopefully some new light on the history of the 4 home run game in Major League Baseball history. It has been done, as the cartoon referred, 19 times, dating all the way back to 1896. And now, of course, it has gotten into the second decade of the 21st century. So it's had quite an illustrious history and kind of a unique history, as well as many of the great ball players who hit 4 home runs. Well, many of them wound up as Hall of Famers. Some others didn't. And still others didn't make the All-Star team in the year that they had that unique feat. So I'm going to take a look at some of the players and really harken back to the differences of the game of yesteryear and today, and also really just maybe focus on some players that you've never heard of or were kind of now footnote people in history. And I'd like to start with, I'm going to list the players. Baseball Almanac was a sensational reference for this. So a shout out to them. And the very first player to do it was back at the turn of the 20th century, actually in 1894 in the National League. Guy by the name of Bobby Lowe. And I do have a picture of him, and I'm going to give a shout out to Baseball Reference. Couldn't find a real picture of Bobby Lowe. And I like to do the baseball cards, as you know. Bobby Lowe, and you can tell that he is a player from the turn of the century with the pillbox hat, that thick walrus mustache, and just the look of the uniform with the button-up shirt. Now, today, usually you have a V-neck and then some buttons, but certainly you don't have a collar like this in baseball today, unless you're talking about the White Sox of 1976, which came out with the most hideous uniforms outside the Astros in the mid-'70s with the rainbow look. But the White Sox in 76 had those short pants and the blue collar, the whole thing. That was one of those innovations by Bill Veeck that just did not, fortunately, succeed. Other players involved Chuck Klein, Gil Hodges, Mike Schmidt, Ed Delahanty. Now, the second guy was Ed Delahanty, who is a Hall of Famer, does not make the All-Star team simply because the All-Star game wasn't played until 33. And interestingly enough, he did it with the Phillies. What I kind of discovered when I was going through this, here's a couple more guys. Of course, you got the great Willie Mays and Joe Adcock, who were rivals. Adcock playing for the Milwaukee Braves, and of course Willie Mays with the New York and San Francisco Giants, and of course ended his career with the Mets. And then 2 guys I'd like to focus on, maybe Bob Horner, and he has the unique distinction of being one of a dozen players who went straight to the major leagues and never played a lick in the minor leagues, not coming, not going, and not in between, let's say, an injury where he'd have to do some sort of, getting back into shape. Never did it in his years in the major leagues. He said it in 1986. This guy had I wouldn't say he's a flash in the pan, but he's certainly a player that had early success, and you really thought he was earmarked for a great career. Maybe not necessarily a Hall of Fame career, because he did have some holes in his game. Specifically, he wasn't a great runner. He was an okay fielder, a good productive hitter but still struck out probably, and this is back in 86, 83, 84, and 82, when actually strikeouts mattered for a hitter, but he did have a tendency to strike out and not walk too much. Nevertheless, he did hit 4 home runs. He was a power hitter, and he did actually make the All-Star team in his rookie year in 1982 and never made one again. So that's Bob Horner. And, of course, Shawn Green. He's a guy, I just want to go over him. Has a nice little swing. And Green played for the Dodgers. They played against the Brewers. It's interesting that Milwaukee, whether it was the Braves or the Brewers, had the most times, they're the most times involved in the 4 home run event, 6 times. And then second is the Dodgers, both in Brooklyn and in LA. But Bob Horner and Shawn Green, I just want to give you an idea. Green was 6'4", 190, so he was pretty tall and lean, much like Ted Williams. All right, and had a good swing. And in the year that he did this, he did it with the Dodgers. He had 42 home runs that year. I was looking at some of the things. How many home runs did it equate to? Just a little bit under 1/8 of its home runs were hit in that one game. But he had 2 monster back-to-back seasons with the Dodgers. In 2001, he had 49 and 125. And then he hit 42 and 114 for the Dodgers the following year, in the year that he hit his 4 home runs. Interestingly enough, as I'm talking about this, the teams that had the 4 home run guy on it, they won 16 of the 19 games. Suarez is kind of unique in that Suarez was on the side of the losing team, and he's the only one that hit a home run to tie the game and actually send it into extra innings. So his home runs was not only dramatic, but important in the game at the time. And of course, I have Suarez in a Reds uniform. He's played for the Mariners, and now he's presently where he set the record with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's had 10. He's been locked on that. Suarez has made an all-star team. The only reason I'm emphasizing the all-star team, it is interesting, some of the players that didn't make the all-star team, especially in the year that they did it, some of them did it very early in the season. So you think that would carry over, because many times I'm thinking of Len Barker, 1981, threw the perfect game Memorial Day weekend in 81 and manages to make the all-star game, which was played that year in August. Remember, the players' strike basically took out June and July. And he was the starting pitcher for the All-Stars in Cleveland, being a Cleveland hurler. And what was unique, that was the only All-Star game he ever made. But it seemed like he rode on that great moment of him pitching the perfect game. He had a decent season. I think he won 16 ball games against 9 for an Indian team that was still in the throes of mediocrity. But nevertheless, some of these guys hit 4 home runs in a game, and they didn't make the All-Star team, and they did it well enough in time, and were having a good season in time to be named to the All-Star team, but nevertheless, they didn't. Here's the 6 guys that did it in the American League. You got Gehrig, and we've talked about him in a previous episode when the Yankees scored 20 runs in a game. They did it, 29 times, quite a bit. But Gehrig happened to hit his 4 home runs in one of the Yankees' 20-run scoring games, beat the Philadelphia A's. The A's happened to score 13 that game. Wild game. Gehrig went 4 of 6 with 4 runs scored, 6 RBIs. So only 2 guys were aboard when he hit his home runs. That was one thing I discovered. Ready for this? Siri is the second guy, 1948. Of all the players, I would probably suggest that Bob Lowe, who had a pretty good career in the early or in the late stages of the 20th century, wound up with a .273 batting average with 989 RBIs. In fact, he drove in 115. In the year that he did it, 1894, ready for this, had a great line. He hit .346 with 212 hits, 34 doubles, 11 triples, 17 home runs, 115 RBIs, drew 50 walks, and had 23 steals. In fact, his line over 162 game stretch, that was the pinnacle of his career. The year before, he had 1489, hit 298. He never hit 340 again, although he hit 320 2 years later. Had a decent career, kind of had really 4 or 5 solid seasons and kind of disappeared. So he had a 273 batting average with 989 RBIs, which would give him, over the course of 162 games, 88 RBIs. Not bad, especially when they were playing about 140 to 154 games. Siri is probably the one I would suggest that of all the players, he's probably the one that you would least suspect of hitting 4 home runs in a game, simply because his career, he played with the White Sox, and he hit for a career, he only played 7 years, hit 86 home runs. Of his 86 home runs, he had 26 for the Indians in 1947. He was 20, but only drove in 62 RBIs. So he had 3, 4, 5 years where he had double figures, 15, 14, 26, 11, and 18, and then was done after 561 games, 73 doubles, 5 triples, 86 home runs, hit 261. So he retired very young, or he's done very young. And as I was going to this, I really didn't do research about why all of a sudden his season was cut short. He did play during the war years of 1943 and 44 and 45, so it wasn't what I would suspect is a war injury. Maybe he just aged too fast. You know, sometimes players and just their star just fizzles real quickly, and that can happen. But he had 4 home runs in a game for the Cleveland Indians in the year that he hit 20. For the White Sox in a year that he hit 18. So they represented 2/9 or 22% of his total output that year. Then you got, of course, Rocky Colavito, who is an interesting guy in that he's not a Hall of Famer, although there are many baseball researchers, and of course he's right next to Mike Cameron, who is the other American leaguer, along with Carlos Delgado and the last guy, Josh Hamilton. Delgado and Hamilton. So those are your 6 American League players. Ready for this? In those 6 games, these American League players combined for 25 hits and 30 at-bats. None of them, though, interestingly enough, hit any other, obviously, had any other base hit in the game. All of their hits were home runs. All of them, with the exception of Colavito, scored 4 runs. Colavito scored 5, the only American leaguer to do it. Excuse me, I apologize. Hamilton had a single in his game, so he was actually 5 for 5. Ready for this? Gehrig was 4 for 6, 4 homers, 6 RBIs in the 2013 win. The great Lou Gehrig. And I've talked about how he's my favorite Yankee of all time, and I'm not a Yankee fan. Then you have Pat Siri, who went 4 for 6 with 7 RBIs. Colavito was 4 for 4 in his game with 6 RBIs and 5 runs scored in an 11-8 win. Mike Cameron was 4 of 5 with 4 runs scored, but only 4 RBIs. He had 4 solo shots. Are you kidding me? One of the greatest games of your night, and nobody's on base to drive it in. Delgado, ready for this? 4s were wild for him. 4 at-bats, 4 hits, 4 runs scored, 4 homers, 6 RBIs in a 10-8 win. And Josh Hamilton, of course, the only one to be perfect with more than 4 hits, 5 for 5, 4 hits, 4 runs scored in the American League, that is. He had at least, fortunately, men were on. He had 8 RBIs in a 10-3 win. Hamilton, of course, would win the All-Star home run slugging contest. Delgado would spend some years with Miami, and then, of course, with the Mets. A solid player, Delgado. I think he might be a cusp Hall of Famer. But because he played in a time when home runs abounded, you would have to suggest that he might be coming up short. And he had 483, and in fact, 483 doubles, 18 triples, 473 home runs. Ready for this? Delgado had 44, 41, 39, 33, 42, 32 home runs. From 1997 to 2006, when he was playing for the Mets, he hit 30 or more home runs. And he drove in over 100 men, 3, 6, 9 times, with another 2 times of 90 or more RBIs. He's a solid player. 473, 15, 12 RBIs, and he hit 280. But he's probably overlooked because he didn't get 500 home runs. He was playing during the time of Jim Thome and Barry Bonds. All right. So baseball may give him another look. I just can't believe he's been retired over 15 years. Seems like he was just playing. And then Colavito, I just wanted to get to Colavito here before I go to the National League. Colavito is another guy who's interesting because there is the theory that the Indians went downhill the day that they traded him because of Frank Lane's many trades as general manager of the Tigers. He was trading Frank Lane. That was his nickname. They traded the manager, Harvey Wall. I want to call him Wallbanger, and now the name's going to come to me. But he was called, and the Brewers of '82 were called the Harvey Wallbangers. He was traded basically 1-for-1, Colavito for Harvey. But it was, many people pointed out, if you're a Cleveland Indian fan or a Cleveland Indian or a Cleveland baseball fan, you equate that moment that he gets traded to the downside of the Cleveland Indian franchise in the 60s. Colavito was a solid player from New York. He would average not only just, put it this way, his first year full-time with the Indians, 1957 at age 24, got 26 doubles and 25 home runs with 84 RBIs. Then he kind of took off, hit 41 homers, 42 homers, 41 home runs, 42 home runs, 35, 45, 37, 22, 34, 26, 30. And then his career just disappeared as well. But by then, he was age 34. And like I said, with a guy like Pat Siri, it's almost as if his career, boom, had an unbelievable peak and then unbelievable valley. And he was basically done. Colavito, though, was one of those players everybody seemed to like. I think the fact that he had the nickname Rocky, the fact that he was from New York originally, he does pitch or play for the Yankees for one season and the Dodgers. So he's kind of like a hometown boy, making good when he returned to the Bronx in his last year, 1968. But he was beloved by the Cleveland fan base, and their hearts were wrenched out when he was traded to the Tigers in 1960. All right. Then, so there have been people, Saber and stuff, who have said or wanted to take a better look at Rocky Colavito. Had a cannon for an arm. Remember, he could or did pitch in the major leagues. Not, maybe he should have given it a go at age 34 and just become, what we would consider today a relief specialist. It would have been interesting with Colavito that way. But like I said, all of a sudden his star just fizzled. It's just one of those things. Mike Cameron never made. I was looking at this. Cameron, another guy who's kind of interesting. He did it while with the Mariners against the White Sox. They won the game 15-4. Now he did it early enough. Actually, it'll be 23 years ago tomorrow, 5/2, 2003. He did it with the Mariners, or 2002, excuse me. He had 25 home runs that year with 80 RBIs. So the home runs constituted 16% of his home runs that year. He's an interesting player in that he had solid numbers and made one All-Star team. Excuse me, he does make an All-Star team, but it was 2001. He actually made it the year before with the Mariners when he hit. Actually, it's kind of interesting. He made it the year before when the Mariners won 116 games. That year was his career year, 25, 110, he had 110 RBIs, 69 walks, and he hit a solid 267. Actually had 13 sacrifices flies that year and 10 hit by pitches. Kind of an interesting player. But like I said, he was one of those guys that you're surprised but not surprised that he hit 4 home runs, because he does have a decent career over 17 years, had 383 doubles, 278 RBIs with 278 home runs with 968 RBIs. So basically he's averaging about 18 homers a year. He's getting about 50 RBIs a year. But you got to remember that those years that I'm including are the years that he really Baseball Almanac includes the 2 years where he basically had cups of coffee, played a total of 39 games with the White Sox. And played 1 year with the Reds. I forgot about that. 21 and 66. But basically was a decent player. A player that would be maybe an added component to your team if you wanted to win. You weren't going to build a championship team around him, but he was a nice part to have on the team. That's the American League. And, of course, Josh Hamilton played with the Rangers, played with the Reds, had some problems. But his career, let me just give you some numbers on him, the power that this guy had. And he did put it on display. And I'm not a big guy. I never watch the All-Star game, all those let's say the festival for the All-Star game. Has it added something to the game? I guess. I mean, I've watched, let's say, the home run hitting contest, but it's nothing that I've really gone crazy about wanting to watch. If I turned on the TV and I happened to watch it and one of the guys was really putting on a show, then I would have watched it. But this is Hamilton. And in terms of greatness, he did have moments. He had 32 home runs and 130 RBIs for the Rangers in 2008. He had 32 home runs and 100 RBIs for the Rangers 2 years later. Then it was 25 and 94 for the Rangers in 2011. And the year he does this, man, he was a masher. 43 homers, 128 RBIs in 2012. Had 31 doubles, and he hit 285. I mean, that's $40 million money probably today, or at least 35. His numbers for his career, he had 200 home runs on the dot, 701 RBIs, and he hit a respectable, this is fantastic. He hit 290. The year that he had the 100 RBIs, 32 home runs, I forgot this. He hit 359. That was 2010, 359. The guy had ability. Now, let's turn our attention to the National League. As I'm turning my attention, I just want to tell you this. The teams, like I said, were 16-3 in those games. In those games, 15 times, the 4 home run guy was on a team that scored 10 or more runs, which is just baffling when you think about it, because I'm looking at some of the scores. Gehrig's game, 20-13. Siri, 11-9. Colavito, 11-8. Cameron, 15-4. Delgado, 10-8. Hamilton, 10-3. All right. And that was the American League. The National League is a little bit different that way. The games were, ready for this, outside of Bobby Lowe, 2011, you go, Ed Delahanty's team lost 9-8. Chuck Klein won 9-6. So Klein was responsible. Put it this way. Lowe had 4 home runs. I'm just going to go over them. He was 5 of 6, 4 runs scored with 6 RBIs. Delahanty, 5 for 5, 4 runs scored, had 7 RBIs in a game that they lost. They lost 9-8. Then Chuck Klein, 4 for 5, 4 runs scored, 6 RBIs. Gil Hodges, let me get him. In their game, Hodges' team won 19-3. The Dodgers pummeled the Braves. And then Joe Adcock in 1954 does the reverse. He hits 4 home runs and a double. And with that 4 home runs and a double, they won the game 15-7. Then Willie Mays, his Giants, they won 14-4. Mays in the game was 4 for 5, 5 runs scored. Finally, some had 8 RBIs. Oh, I apologize. Hodges had 9 RBIs in that 19-3 game. Adcock had 7. Mays had 8 RBIs in his 4-run game. Then, probably the most exciting of all the games, with, I would say, the exception of, I don't know, maybe that Gehrig game, is Mike Schmidt's performance in a 1976 game against the Cubs. The final score, 18-16, was 5 of 6, 4 runs scored, 8 RBIs. Schmidt that year in that game, 4/17/76. Schmidt did it in that game. Ready for this? Home runs were hit by Gary Maddox, Steve Swisher. Rick Monday had 2. Schmidt had 4, and Bob Boone had 1. A total of 7, 8, 9 home runs. I guess the wind was blowing out. 18 runs scored by the Philadelphia Phillies, 16 by the Cubbies. There was 43 hits in the game. At the end of the second inning, it was, and this is why it's the most exciting game, it was 7-1 Cubs. At the end of 3, it was 12-1 Cubs, and you're thinking maybe the manager, Danny Ozark at the time, is going to say, listen, this is a blowout. Let me rest the guys. But he knew something that obviously I didn't. Probably with the wind blowing out, he said, let me give these guys a shot. And boy, oh boy, do they. The Phillies get 1 back in the 4th inning to make it 12-2, but the Cubs respond with one of their own, 13-2. Phillies, though, put up 2 in the 5th inning, so it's 13-4 in an official game. Nobody scores in the 6th inning, just like they did in the first frame. But then the Phillies tack on 3 in the 7th and 5 in the 8th to make it a 13-12 game. And the Phillies rally for 3 runs in the top of the 9th to make it 15-13. And I apologize, I forgot this. The Cubs score 2 in the bottom of the 9th to tie the game, send it into extra innings, and that's where the Phillies scored 3 runs. 3 runs in the 10th. The Cubs were only able to answer back with 1 to make it 18-16 as a final. So this is a game that went back and forth. And the Cubs, I mean, how many times do you blow a 13, well, typical Cubs, how many times do you blow a 13-3 lead and wind up losing the game, not only losing the game, but losing it in extra innings in your park? So I stand corrected. Suarez is second overtime or extra inning game. I apologize. I should have known that. Sometimes you have brain freezes and you forget. Anyway, I wanted to get to the other guys here in the moments. I spoke about Horner. Horner was 4 or 5 with 6 RBIs and 4 runs scored. Mark Winton, another guy, very similar, I find, to Mark or Mike Cameron, and that is that both outfielders, I believe it was Mark Winton who didn't make the All-Star team that year, and I think never made an All-Star team. He doesn't ever make an All-Star team, and he finishes his career with 105 home runs, 423 RBIs in 11 years. He played with the Blue Jays, the Indians, the Cardinals, the Red Sox, the Phillies, the Braves, the Mariners, the Yankees, and the Indians. All right. His best season, of course, was his 4 home run output. Ready for this? This is incredible. He had how many RBIs in that game? He has the most RBIs of any player. He had 12 RBIs in that game, and he finished that season with 99 RBIs. So he basically had over 12% of his RBIs and 16% of his home runs in the one game. Never makes an all-star team. And you would have thought that year he might have made the team because I think the game was played. Yeah, well, the game was late September, but he still had a solid season. And you wonder why he didn't make the all-star team. And again, it's during that time period, 93, lots of home runs, a lot of big boppers. So, only having, let's say, 25 would relegate him to maybe the middle of the pack, especially for outfielders. Sean Green, we talked about. Scooter Gennett, who said it on D-Day in 2017, is an interesting player because he does not make the all-star team that year. He actually made the all-star team, and Gennett had an unbelievable game too. He had 10 RBIs, second most, and did not make the all-star team. He went 4 for 5 in the game, obviously with 10 RBIs and 4 runs scored. The one all-star team he made was, I believe, the year later. It was 2018. And he was basically out of the game within a couple of years. Yeah, by 2019, he played his last season with the Giants. And in 2018, when you think about it, he had 23 home runs, 92 RBIs. In back-to-back years, his 2 best years, the 4 home run was his greatest season was 27 and 97. And Scooter Gennett hit 295 that year. The next year he hit 310 to justify. I mean, he had 2 good seasons where you say to yourself, hey, maybe, he should have qualified for the both. And then, of course, the last guy I want to focus on, J.D. Martinez. His is interesting because he was traded in the year that he hit the 4 home runs. Martinez was traded along with, ready for this, Chuck Klein when he did it for the Phillies in 1936. He was actually traded that year from the Phillies to the team that I believe he goes to the Cubs. Chuck Klein, let me just get this right. In that year, 1936, he goes after hitting 5 home runs for the Phillies in 1936, or for the Cubs in 1936. The Phillies reacquire him, and he hits 20 for them with 86 RBIs. But he did it for the Phillies after being acquired from the Cubs by the Philadelphia Phillies, and he did it in July of 1936. Martinez does it in September 4th of 2017 after he was traded at the deadline from the Tigers to the Diamondbacks. Right? And I do believe helps the Diamondbacks get into the playoffs. But he finished that season, 2017, ready for this, with 45 home runs, and he had 104 RBIs. Monster season. He then went to the Red Sox where he had 43, 36, had a tough season in 2020, had 7 and 27. Actually, it's not bad because if you think they only played 50 games, he would have had 21 home runs and 81 RBIs. Not bad. Then 28, 16, 33. And when he last played with the Mets, he had 16 homers, 69 RBIs. That was J.D. Martinez. I just wanted to give this before I end the program, and that is this. Collectively, the 4 home run guys were 85 for 98 for an 867 batting average. They scored 82 runs, had 2 doubles, 76 home runs, and 134 RBIs. That's disappointing. If you went by Earl Weaver's home run, 3-run home runs, they'd have over 210 RBIs. If you just said, even if they doubled it up, they'd have 138. But they missed with 134, and I think it's really because Mays, Schmidt, Witten, Jeanette, and I would even say Gil Hodges helped them get it up almost to an average of 1 home run and 2 RBIs. Ready for this? They're slugging. I had to do a double take on this and do it twice. But the most perfect slugging you can have is 4.000. If you had a home run every time you're up at bat and you only get 1 at bat, you're 1 for 1 with a home run. That's a slugging average of 4. These guys were close to it. 3.214 was the slugging average for these guys. And just to let you know, the American League was 25 of 30, so 833 batting percentage. The National League is 60 for 68. Clearly, the National League with 52 homers, 97 RBIs, as opposed to 24 home runs, 37 RBIs for the American League. And last but not least, just one more time, I said this before, the teams involved the most in 4 home runs, Dodgers and the Braves, all right, and the A's in the American League. And I believe the A's in the American League. I was just fixated on the Dodgers and the Braves, how many times they were doing it. And if you have a guy who hits 4 home runs, you're not perfect, 19-0. You're only 16-3 in those games. This is Will O'Toole reporting a little bit further on the history of the 4 home run single game record of players. Hope you join us next week with another edition of Park Ridge Sports History. Thank you very much.